Good morning, everybody. I'm Joel Gandara. This is a Brotherhood book club presentation and also sisterhood because the women, and I got Jessica Gandara with me, my wife, the women have their own book club. And in this month, we just coincided on the same book for a very special occasion because we have Irene Zisblatt, Holocaust survivor. But I won't be introducing her. David Rothenstein will because he's the guy who puts together all the books. Every month, we read a different book. And very often we get the author to agree to come speak to us, and this is a really special one because Irene is 96 years old. We're not going to have her around forever, and she's doing such a great job of getting out there and telling her story and the story of so many others who died in the Holocaust, or like in her case, the rare ones who really made it and survived. And she's got a heck of a story. We don't have the book physically to show you guys for those that haven't read it because we gave it away after we read it. It's called The Fifth
I'm
Diamond.
going to show you the book. I'm going to
Perfect.
show you the book.
Perfect. She'll show us a copy of it. It's called The
Uh,
Fifth Diamond. And I'll put a link so you can buy it on Amazon. I'll put it
that
here in the chat in just a minute.
is-
All right. David
oh,
Rothenstein is our book czar. This guy's an attorney, a real estate broker, a real estate developer, and a good
Here's the
friend of
book.
mine. Oh, there's the book. Yeah, The Fifth Diamond. I'll put a link in here in the chat. Thanks, Irene. And so David has been putting this together. It was his great idea. And since it was his great idea, he took it over and he runs our book club. All right, David, you're up.
All right. Well, first, I just want to say thank you to Irene for blessing us with her time, right? Time is the most valuable asset that we all have. And so we're very grateful today to have this time with Irene. Irene is one of the few Holocaust survivors that is still with us and is able to share her story. Irene her story of resilience is like no other. She was able to successfully find purpose and meaning in her deep struggles and pain to improve the world for decades and decades to come after having survived. She has been honored in an Academy Award-winning documentary, The Last Days. Irene is a mother of two children and is Nana to five wonderful grandchildren, which give her an added purpose now. And Irene is going to tell us her unfathomably tough journey from a small town in Europe to South Florida and having gone through the Holocaust and being a survivor at Auschwitz. And we're just excited to learn from her and firsthand hear how hate can bring us all into the darkest places that can be imagined. And hopefully grow as a society and know that this will never happen again, and that we can be better and find an opportunity for us to come together and learn today from Irene personally. So thank you so much, Irene.
Thank you, and thank you, Joel, and everybody that has done this wonderful event. It's very important that we share and we pass it on to protect our future. So I am not going to tell you a lot of things, but I'm going to get to my story and let you know some of the stuff. So, you know my name and you read the book, but I'm going to read something that I have written, and it's not in the book. It's going to be in the next book. From time to time, it dawns on me that I was detached from humankind and that I will have to learn how to hold a fork, how to live with family men. A hard task, impossible struggle. Our training ground was Auschwitz. It was easy to step over the bodies on the road of murder. I wanted to cry for the dead, but they wouldn't let me. A silent prayer is attached into my footsteps. As I hear stepping over at the decomposing arms, hips, or heads, Hitler's imprint on our roads, the sky, everywhere. He tore our inside into unbearable memories. He also set us up for hopes we shall never have. Hitler, why didn't let us have a normal death or a normal funeral? Hitler, I have survived to the age where a grave is a mark of humanity. I will forgive nothing you have done. Even before you murdered us, you tried to cripple our minds. We, the people of books, of knowledge, you burned the broken wings of our bodies. We will always curse you. I will curse you especially. How will the world heal itself of Auschwitz? Is there a large pill for a large virus called hate? Can it get well? Can we get well? Today, when I think in Auschwitz, Birkenau, I hear their voices. I feel their point. But I am helpless. I remember because I am not allowed to forget. And that is who I am. So my story takes an hour, but I'm going to skip a lot of stuff because you read the book. So when the Nazis invaded my little town, which was resort and beautiful, we were only 263 families and only a third were Jewish. We had a wonderful relationship with our non-Jewish friends, and we went on with our lives until 1944. When Hitler invaded, everything changed. My friends that I was very close with hated me. They wouldn't let me go to school. My father's business was taken away, my grandfather's, and we were helpless. We were hungry, we were thirsty, we were unbelievably not us. My siblings, my friends, we loved living in those beautiful mountains, but not far from us in Germany. Hitler was ending democracy and was lining up his henchmen, the SAs, the stormtroopers, the SS, the police, and the Gestapo, the special state police. Our government was an ally to Germany, but chose not to deport the Jewish people yet. Instead, ordered harsh restrictions. All men and boys were ordered into a sort of army, which was actually a work army. My Jewish friends ignored me, my non-Jewish friends ignored me, and my hopes were destroyed by Nazi hatred. Our food was running out. They wouldn't let us buy in any store. A curfew was enforced, and we had to wear the yellow star. I'll never forget the sadness in my parents' faces when we children were hungry and they had no food to give us. I think my mother gave me her diamonds to save my pride. And then she gave them to me with a purpose, to buy bread if I get hungry. In 1939, when Poland was invaded, a few men were able to escape to us over the mountains. My father and his friends helped them to safety. Their destination, Palestine. I don't know if they ever made it to Palestine, but one night I heard a man beg my father to take his family and go with him, because when the SS come to us, they will kill our children just like they do in Poland. I couldn't sleep the rest of the night. In the morning, the man was gone, and I asked my father, who are those SS and why are they killing the children? What have the children done? And my father said the man wasn't himself. He didn't know what he was saying. People don't do such a things. See, the most civilized country in all of Europe was doing such a things. Once a day, we were allowed to go, we were in the ghetto, and once a day, we were allowed to go to the river that surrounded the ghetto. See, we were surrounded by waters that even if somebody wanted to escape, there was no way because the river was surrounding the ghetto, and across the river was a military fort with guns and machine guns waiting for anybody to try and cross. So the ghetto was really the beginning of a prison. So then they decided that the cattle trains arrived, and they told us that we are going to Turkey to work in the vineyard until after the war. Well, Turkey is a vineyard in our own country, a beautiful place, and everybody was very happy to pack up and go there. So my mother again packed our suitcases and reminded me that if we work in separate places in the vineyard and I get hungry, to use the diamonds to buy bread. But when they locked the doors in the cattle train, I knew that something was very bad. My father, there was no light, there was no water, there was nothing but an empty wagon. Everybody was sitting on the floor. My father was standing by the one little window we had to see how far away we are from the vineyard. And the cattle train was so bad. The children were crying. They were cold and hungry. The old people were struggling to stay alive. And we didn't know how to help anyone. So our mothers decided that the older children should sit on the floor against the wall and hold a small child in their arms. This way, the older people will have a little more room to move around and maybe they won't die. So that's what we did. And then my father saw through the window that we are not going to the vineyard. And he said, they lied to us. We just left our country and we crossed the border to Poland. I was holding my 2-year-old brother in my arms and he never stopped crying. He wasn't crying for bread or water. He just wanted to go home. And I promised him that we will be home soon. But when my father said that we crossed the border to Poland, I remembered the man that spent the night in our home and what he said about the Nazis killing the little children. I held on to my little brother so tight, I promised myself I will never let them take him away from me. My little brother never saw his home again. We were in the cattle train for about 3 days and 4 nights, and the whole time I was wishing the train should stop and we should be able to get off and go to a bathroom like normal people. But most I was wishing that they should give the children some food and water and maybe they will stop crying. We never saw. So when the train stopped, they made us leave our belongings at the train and told us that the men will bring it to us later because they separated us. The women separate and the men separate. We never saw our fathers or our brothers or our belongings. As we were passing the cattle train, I saw chimneys at the distance, and I pointed them out to my mother, and I said, the factories we are going to work in. but my mother paid no mind to me. In this chaos, she was trying to hold us together. She took my little brother from my arms, and she told me to hold my 4-year-old little sister's hand really tight so she doesn't get lost. We didn't know, but a man in a striped jacket came over, and he asked to help to carry my little brother, but my mother wouldn't let him. But she asked him, "Where are we?" And she said, "Auschwitz." But we didn't know what Auschwitz was or why we were there. There were 4 trains waiting to get off, like the one we just got off. And little did I know that we were the daily ration for the gas chambers. When Hitler declared the assault on Hungarian Jews, it was during the final solution. The final solution meant that not one Jew will survive to bear witness. And in 54 days on 147 cattle trains, 437,402 Hungarian Jews were in Auschwitz. When we passed the cattle trains, a handsome assessment holding a baton-like stick in his hand. And he pointed that stick at my mother and yelled at her, "Put the child down and go to the right." But my mother, being so desperate to hold us together, she yelled back at him, "My children will go with me." He got so angry that she did not obey him. He hit my hand between my little sister. I had to let go for her of her little hand forever. The SS men and women with their vicious dogs again yelling at us, "Take your clothes off." We were in Auschwitz and in this big, big hall with thousands of people. And they yelled at us, "Take your clothes and shoes off and hold them in one hand." And they gave us one piece of garb barely covering our body. At the door, when I saw that they were looking at people's mouth. See, when I found the diamonds in my skirt that my mother said that they were, I wanted to save them and I didn't know where to put them because I had no clothes on my body. So I put them in my mouth. But when I saw that they were looking in people's mouth and pulling out gold teeth, I didn't have any gold teeth in my mouth, but my mother's diamonds were in my mouth. And I knew when they find them, they'll take them away. And they will shoot me for not putting them in the bin. So for fear, I swallowed the diamonds. I was reduced to a number that represented a nothing. I was stripped from my identity and my dignity. But you see, that was their first process of dehumanizing us. Then they lined us up in rows of 5 and marched us into a place called Birkenau, a planet of evil. The SS locked the electric barbed wire gates behind us, never to let us out. It was spring, but flowers and grass didn't grow there. The sky was as gray as the mud under my feet. The wooden barracks with 3-story bunks were our luxury housing. 1,000 of us in each barrack and 10 of us in each bunk. That didn't give us much hope to get out of there. Our food for the day was a cup of brown liquid they called soup. It was seasoned with a chemical that was destroying our reproductive organs. The twice-a-day roll call wasn't dish to take count, but Mengele's haven for human guinea pigs for his inhuman experiments. At the end of the day, when my mother didn't come for me, I decided to go look for her because the last thing she called out to me at the train was, "Don't cry, I will come for you later." So, with my hair shaved, with my clothes taken away, she won't recognize me. So, I decided to go to look for her. When I got to the door, the blockava slapped my face and yelled at me, "Where are you going?" And when I told her, she pointed to the chimneys and said, "Your mother is just about now coming out of one of those chimneys. And if you don't go back to your bunk, all of you will go there today." I was so scared. I didn't know why she was saying that about my mother. My mother was only 32 years old and she was beautiful and she never did anything wrong. Why would anyone do this to my mother? But I had no answers to my question. So I climbed up to my bunk and I tried to go to sleep, hoping that when I get up, this madness will be gone. But I couldn't fall asleep because cries of little children were so sad. We didn't have any windows in my barrack, but a 3-inch opening in the wall. And when I looked out, I saw trucks coming down the road. And 2 little children, this little, fell out of the truck. And the assessment picked them up by their feet, and he just threw them against the truck. The blood was everywhere. I was so helpless, I didn't know what to do, so I started to scream. But the girl next to me put her hand on my mouth and she begged me not to scream or even talk because the punishment was death. I was thinking, I was calling to God, but God didn't answer me. And I was thinking, where is he? Why isn't he helping these little children that didn't even know what life was about? But he didn't answer me. And so I decided not to bother him because he has such a big job to do. I am not going to bother him. So I never spoke to him again or asked him for help for myself or anybody else. Against all impossibilities, I was not losing faith. And the next day, I was selected by Dr. Joseph Mengele for his brutal experiments. I was no longer a 13-year-old child. My childhood couldn't continue in the death camps, but in a desperate effort, I had to save my mother's diamond that carried her love and her sacrifice. Once a day, we were allowed to go to the bathroom. I didn't have the pleasure to sit on the hole because I had to find a safe place to save my mother's diamonds. But because the love and the pride they carried was stronger than the Nazi hatred. I saw hatred so strong when Mengele was experimenting on me without anesthetics, and the pain was so unbearable. I saw joy in his eyes watching me suffer. That kind of a hatred existed in the 20th century in Nazi Germany. When the SS packed the gas chamber with mothers and fathers and sisters and brothers and grandparents, I was there. I saw them. And I heard them cry out for their last time, Shema Israel. At that moment, my will to live became stronger and more important. I promised to be their voice if I survived this evil. Those children's voices were silenced in the most unspeakable terror in the Holocaust, just because their eyes were not blue enough, or their skin not light enough, or they were Jewish. Those 1.5 million children are depending on us to carry their message. Never, never again. But never again is now, October 7th. repeat it again and again. And there is nothing we could have done about it. When Nazi doctors were torturing me and the pain was so unbearable, I knew that we must endure and live as long as we can for them. During the experiments, I had a silent friend. Her name was Sapka. Even in our pain, we could cry. And then they took Sapka away. And when she didn't come back, I just knew that she went to the gas chamber. And then they called a selection and they chose 1,500 of us to go to the gas chamber. When we were going inside, we saw that the gas chamber wasn't big enough to hold 1,500 people. So we started to push back outside, and I was pushed back to the door. So I dug my nails into the side of the door. I was just hanging on there, not to hope that somebody will save me, but I just wanted to look at the sky instead of being in there. And then the Cyclone B arrived, and the SS ordered the guard to close the door so they can throw it inside. But the guard was so helpless, he couldn't close the door because I was in the door. But he had to obey at any cost. So he threw me out and he closed the door. I ran up the ramp and I saw the gas chamber was underneath, underneath the ground, but the roof of the gas chamber was above the ground. So between the roof and the ground, there was this much space. And being that I only weighed about 50 pounds, I crawled underneath and I was laying underneath the eave, hoping and hoping, but nothing I knew was going to happen. And then a miracle did happen. A Sonderkommando boy came to do his job and he found me first. He pulled me out from underneath the eave. I was naked because when you go to gas chamber, they strip you. And he took off his jacket, he covered my naked body, and he said, "Sit, I'll be right back." I thought I was hallucinating because I never saw anything like this happen before. But he did come back in a few minutes. He took my hand. He says, "We're going to walk around this gas chamber. We're going to go across. And there is a train going to a labor camp. I'm going to try and put you on that train." Oh, my God. I says, "What is your name?" He spoke in Hungarian, so I knew that he was from my country. I says, "What is your name and where are you from?" And he says, "It doesn't matter. I only have 3 more days to live. But if you make it, live a little for me too." I said, "What do you mean? You're 18 years old. You're young." He says, "That's what they do." See, the Sonderkommando only gave 3 to 4 months to work there. And after that, they would kill all these wonderful, strong, beautiful people and select new ones. And he was one of them that he only had 3 more days to live. But he did take me across, and he did put me on that train. And I've been looking for him ever since, but I never found him. But I pray for him every single day. And the train took me out of there, and I went to a labor camp. When the train stopped in Neuengamme, we were there. The train unloaded the cargo and left empty. That showed us that no one leaves this camp. We were put in barracks and bunks just like in Auschwitz. In the morning, I looked down to my lower bunk and another miracle happened. My friend Sapka was looking straight at me. Oh my God, I was so happy. We had such a reunion. We both thought that we were dead. And here we are in a work camp. So we worked in separate places. We were packing ammunition to go to the front for the army. But this was Jewish work. And we did a lot of sabotage. We emptied the shelves and sent them empty because they weren't given these shelves to the German soldiers. They were given it to the Allied soldiers. So we did a little bit of sabotage. So we worked there for a long time, until January of 1945. They gave us a blanket, a pair of wooden shoes that didn't fit. It was January, it was cold out, the snow was high, and they put us up on a death march. The death march meant that we were marching away from freedom. Whichever side the Allies approached, they took us in the opposite direction. So we should never get liberated. Every couple of feet, they would pick out people, line them up on the side of the road, shot them, and left them without burial or anything. Sabka and I were we didn't know what is happening in this horrible world. And so we marched. By April, they never gave us any food or water, no rest. And by April, out of 5,000 of us that we started out in January, we were 200 left alive. And we decided that we're going to sit down on the road, and when they tell us to march, we're not going to move and let them shoot us, because we had no nourishment. We just gave up. And just then planes arrived from behind the mountains, and they were shooting everything that was moving. But they never touched us. They were shooting the trucks that were carrying the supplies for the SS that were guarding us. The SS pushed us off the road, and they went to see if they had any survivors. I don't know if they had any survivors, but when they came back, they ordered us to march again. And I didn't want to march anymore. So I did sit down on the road. And I just wanted them to shoot me, because like I knew wherever we're going, whenever we get there, they're going to shoot us anyway. But Sapka pulled me up and she says, "What are you doing?" I says, "Sapka, we don't know where we're going. And when we get there, they're going to shoot us anyway. So might as well do it now." She says, "I know where we're going. We're going to the library, and we're going to read a book. And then we're going to go home, and we're going to have Shabbat dinner with our family. And then we're going to sleep in our own bed, and we won't have to share it with 10 people. So you can't die today. So get up and walk." So I did. A couple of steps later, she held me back and she says, "Stop, wait until they pass, and then we're going to go the opposite direction." I said, "Sapka, they're going to see us. They're going to shoot us." She says, "They can't see us because the planes destroyed the trucks that carried their flashlights. They cannot shoot us because they destroyed their ammunition. And God created this dark night so they can't see us. So we're going to go." Okay, so we did. When the column passed, Sapka and I turned around and we just ran back. And we kept running all night. In the morning, we saw an abandoned farm. So we ran in there. We were digging in the ground to see if we can find some leftover food. And I found a potato. And he says, "What are you doing?" I said, "Sapka, you said that we can't go to heaven without real food. That's going to take us to heaven. This potato." She says, "Okay." So we walked up and we found a little brook with water, clean water we have never seen before. So we were so rich. We had this little potato and a bunch of clean water. We drank a lot of water. We shared the potato. We had a half a blanket left because we lost our shoes in the snow. So we used the blanket to wrap up our feet so we can walk in the snow. But Sapka and I only weighed about 40, 50 pounds. The half a blanket was okay. So we decided to rest. And she says, get under the blanket and just rest. So we were in the mountains by this water. And all of a sudden, there were some people. And I said, Sapka, let go of the blanket. I want to see who they are. And she says, okay. She said, I don't want to see who's going to shoot me, so I'm not coming out of the blanket. I says, let go of the blanket and I'm going to see who's going to shoot me. So I looked out and I saw two soldiers, big guys in strange uniforms, speaking a strange language. I spoke 7 languages. They didn't understand one of them. I didn't understand theirs. One soldier was bending down to help me up, and his dog tags fell out of his shirt. And on the dog tags, he had a little tiny mezuzah. At that point, Sapka and I thought we were the only 2 Jews left in all of Europe. I said, Sapka, there is another Jew here. And she said, well, who is he? I said, I don't know. He says, I'm not coming out of the blanket. I said, so he helped me up. And I wanted to hold the mezuzah, and he had this little mezuzah on the dog tag. And I said, I want to, and he put it in my hand and I kissed it. And the first time since I saw those 2 little children murdered in Auschwitz off of the truck, I looked up to heaven and I said, thank you, God, for watching over us. I felt that he was a friend. And so he took the mezuzah back and he picked me up and he says, sit, I'll be right back. And he left. A few minutes later, a whole bunch of them came down the mountain towards me. And that was General Patton's 3rd Unit's Army that found us. They had a German-speaking soldier in their unit, so I was able to communicate with him. And he looked at me and he said, who, what? Why do you look like this? And I tried, who did this to you? God knows I didn't look human. I had no hair, no clothes. I was covered with lice and mud. And I says, the Nazis did that. Well, who does this to children? I tried to explain that the Nazis do this to children. He didn't know what I was talking about. But he was looking and he just saw that I need some food. So he says, what would you like to eat? Oh my God. That's when Sapka came out of the blanket, because during the march, the death march, we talked about food, and she told me that her favorite food was scrambled eggs. And she asked me what my favorite food was, and I said, I just want to have a small loaf of bread, all to myself, not to have to share it with 10 people. And when this soldier asked me what I wanted to eat, I said, and Sapka came out of the blanket. She says, can we just have a little bit of scrambled eggs and a small loaf of bread so our wish becomes a reality? You never saw such a sight. 200 men, gorgeous, tall, strong, gathering up little debris, making little fires, scrambling eggs in their helmets. They didn't have any bread, but they had these brown boxes. They opened them up and a lot of crackers came out of there. And these brown chunks turned out to be chocolate, but I never saw chocolate before, so I didn't care, but I was happy with the crackers. And Sapka was very happy with her scrambled eggs. And then after, they gave us clean shirts, so we went back to our little brook and we shed our lousy stuff and left it, buried it in the sand there. And we put on these clean shirts. When we came back, they had a Red Cross fan with 2 beds and pillows and sheets and white blankets. Oh my God. We weren't sure it was for us, so we sat on the floor for a while. But when nobody came, we sat on the bed. I cannot explain to you how that felt. To know that we are going to sleep without in this bed without sharing it with 10 people. So in the morning, when I got up, Sapka didn't get up. So I yelled at her, Sapka, get up. Today might be the day that we will be free and we have to face the free world together. So get up. But she didn't get up. The medic came in to tell us that we have to get ready because we have to leave the mountain. See, they were there to fight the snipers, and the snipers were closing in, so we have to leave the mountain or we're going to be caught in death. And I says, please help her wake up because she's so tired, she cannot wake up by herself. So I saw he gave her an injection and he tried, but she didn't wake up. I says, don't let her sleep so long. And he says, I can't wake her up. She is sleeping in a very, very beautiful place. She is no longer sick. She's no longer hungry. I says, what are you talking about? She was never sick. And he says, she was very sick. She died in her sleep of typhus. And she tell us where you want us to bury her body because we got to leave. So I said, let's bury her body by the little brook where you gave us a chance to be human again. So we took her there and we buried her. And they promised me that after the war, because the war was full fight, General Patton and his army was in Berlin. They were trying to catch up to him. The war was everywhere. And they promised me that after the war, they will come back and they will go and take her body to a real cemetery. So they left me in a field hospital near Pilsen, between the Czech border and Pilsen, in the mountains with the wounded soldiers. And they went on to finish the war. And I was there and they cured me in there for whatever I had, I don't know what. And after the war, they did come back, not the same soldier, different soldiers. And we went back to the little brook to get her body to a real cemetery. But he couldn't find the body because the mountain was so destroyed from fighting that, but she is in my heart all the time. And they took me back to the hospital and when I got done, and when I got cured, they put me in a displaced person camp in Salzburg, Austria, where I met 40 children that were waiting to go to an orphanage to Sweden. And while I was waiting to go to Sweden, there was a letter that came from the United States. A man by the same last name as mine was looking for me and asking me if I want to come to the United States, to a free country. I screamed so loud, they must have heard me all the way to New York. But I had to stay for 2 years to wait to be processed in to be able to come to this great country. And I gave my spot up to another child to go to Sweden. And I stayed there for 2 years while they were processing me in. And in 1947, finally, I came to this country. And when I came to this country, I met people I never saw before because they left for the United States before I was born. But it turned out to be that I had 3 uncles and 2 aunts that were my father's siblings living in New York and in New Jersey. So I stayed in New York with the uncle that processed me into the United States. And I didn't like New York. So I moved to New Jersey and I lived there with my aunt. And they wanted me to go to college because it said in my papers that they were responsible for my, and I says, I don't want to go to college. You did so much for me. I'm going to go to work. And if I have to go to college, I'll pay my own way. So I got a job and I went to work. I was working for RCA. I was really good at the job, so I got promoted and they sent me to college anyway. And I became an assistant engineer to the electronics. And I worked with the engineers for 8 years. I met my wonderful, wonderful husband. I was a BBYO girl, so I was president of B'nai Brit Young Women. And he came to an affair that I was doing a fundraising for Israel. And he bought $10,000 worth of Israeli bonds. And he held my hand, never let go, and proposed to me that night. We fell in love the first sight. And by the end of the year, we were married. He was the most wonderful. He was a soldier in, I think I forget which war it was before we met. He was a soldier and he was wonderful. It was like God sent this person to me. He was the most wonderful person that I have ever wished for, that I could ever imagine having in my life. He knew I was a Holocaust survivor, but he never asked me anything about it. You know more about me than he ever knew. But unfortunately, we were married. We had 2 children, one of them, Robin and Mark. He's here. I couldn't have any more because Mengele destroyed my insides, but thank God for the 2. And I had another Holocaust. At the age of 40, he died of a heart attack. And I was going through a life with 2 little children all over again. Being sad, being angry, but here I am today. I am grateful for everything that I have. Everything in my life is good. I cannot find anything bad that I can say, even though people say, those are all bad things that happened to you. I got through them, so they weren't so bad. But I went back after the war on the March of the Living with teenagers that are learning to know what happened then so they can protect the world in the future. So I didn't want to go back. But when I saw that these children don't know anything, I said, okay, I'll go. So I went in 1994, I went back with 5,000 teenagers from 49 countries, back to Auschwitz, Birkenau, and all the camps that I have been. When I got into Birkenau and I saw how much they destroyed, that the world should not know what they have done, I was so angry I wanted to hit someone. But most what I wanted to do is yell at Mengele. But I didn't want to scare these children. So what used to be the gypsy camp, they were still a couple of barracks they didn't destroy. So I went inside one of them, and on top of my voice, I yelled at him, look at me. I am alive. In spite of all the experiments you performed on me and Sapka and many other Jewish children, I am back with 5,000 Jewish kids and you can't touch it. Since there is no room for hatred for my life, that was my revenge. From there, I went to the #2 gas chamber, where my whole family was murdered. And again, I was angry. When I saw inside the chamber how they died, I was angry. But I didn't want to die. I didn't want to yell at him anymore. So I sat down. I lit all the candles that I had. I brightened up this room, and I prayed for the victims that died such a cruel death. And then I was ready to leave. And as I wanted to see it one more time, so I turned around. And I saw a table with a Seder set, and my whole family was sitting around the table. And next to my little sister was an empty chair, and that was my chair. So I turned around and I wanted to go sit in my chair. But my mother put her hand in front of me, and she said, "You can't sit in your chair today." She yelled at me. "I want you to stop crying and do what you must." I reached out to hug her, but she wasn't there. I looked at the table, nobody was there. So I went back to my candles. I lit more candles. I brightened the room up more, and I wrote her a letter. I like to share the letter with you. I will not cry anymore, and I will never forget the children who died a cruel death because they were Jewish. I will never forget the painful look in their eyes when they marched to their death. Dear Mother, this letter I am writing to you is very special. I want to tell you how much I missed you. I missed you on my wedding day, and you did not share my happiness. But most I missed you when I gave birth to your grandchildren, and you could not hold them. It is difficult to live with the fact that you were cheated of enjoying them. As for me, being a mother today, I can feel the pain you felt when your children died in your arms from the gas. For me, there is no medicine I can take to heal my pain. I am still learning to live with it. But I promise you to tell the world all that happened. And I hope that God will help me stay strong. And I pray that He watches over our children of tomorrow so they can remember the past and never be silent when they see injustice against people. What happened to us should never happen again. And on this day, I am making a commitment to help heal the sickness of hatred. And when I can't help heal anymore, I hope to sit in my chair and tell them that you are being learned from. When I came up in the gas chamber, I shared my past for the first time in 50 years with 5,000 teenagers around the world. Oh, today, I want to say, the SS trained me to step over the dead and not to cry for the dead. Today, I want to say to them, I survived your atrocities and I cry for the dead. And I walk among people that value human lives. And I have not stopped since. Since then, I shared my past to at least 6 million people around the world. I still can't believe that that I am living today and sharing my past with the most powerful government in the world. But sharing with you and all the teenagers around the world is most important because they are going to tell the world what they know and what they experienced in Auschwitz. Because the Holocaust is not just a part in history, but it lingers in the present. Think of all the places that happened since. So we must absolutely be aware of hatred and change people's mind about hating others. Otherwise, it will cause another painful like the Holocaust. We must work together to protect the future of human existence for generations to come, and it has to start with our first generation. They are the first at a distance of the Holocaust and the last generation to know survivors firsthand. None of their children will be able to meet a survivor, so they have a very important mission to teach their children what they learned from survivors. I need them to help me to bring a good understanding about about this painful event. When I am no longer here, I hope that they will carry my message to the future, so those fires of hell become a light of hope. All the technological devices my generation has created in our lifetime, we failed to create a tool to stop genocide. But they have the power to change the world, and my mission is to help them find the tool. It was easy for Hitler to take their lives, but it is difficult for us to get Hitler out of our lives. So please join my children and grandchildren who will tell and retell of our losses and grief and hope to stop genocide. I will not be silent, and I will never forget the victims. As long as I am able, I will speak worldwide to improve human conditions. The memory and the lessons of the Holocaust is not negotiable and a subject not to be forgotten. I relive my pain again and again, so present and future generations can learn from it. We cannot allow the flames of hatred consume our world. We must learn the lessons of the past and bring and share a better future. I want to stop because I want to open it up for questions. So, in spite the chemicals in my soup and Mengele's experiments, I have a 6-foot-tall son, a beautiful daughter, and 5 grandchildren and 1 great-grandson in my life. My mother's diamonds and I also survived Hitler's atrocity. They are to be handed down to each firstborn girl in every generation to preserve my mother's memory. They are not to be sold except if they are hungry. They are to buy bread. So thank you so much for today. And ask me anything that to clear up. Don't hesitate, no matter how sad it is. I am sad anyway, but you need to have your answers because you might not have another chance to ask another survivor. So please ask whatever.
David, do you want to call on folks if they lift their hand?
Yeah, sure. Who has a question that they would like to ask Irene?
Okay, thank you.
Oh,
I mean, it was hard to skip because the story has got more, but you read the book, so you have. But if you have questions, I'll be very happy to answer them. So you will have whatever you didn't hear answered to you.
John, we have somebody with his hand up, please.
So actually I have two questions. So as I talked to you, I had a chance to talk to you for just a little bit. I had some affinity with feeling some persecution when I was younger because of my beliefs when I was younger. You mentioned the yellow star that you wore, and there were other groups that were there. Did you interact or were you separated from them?
Before we were separated?
No, I mean, were you separated? Because you had the yellow star. So in my family group, they had purple triangles.
Well, the people
Were they in your camp?
well, you mean when we got to Auschwitz
Yes.
at the train?
I
When
don't know when they wore them exactly, but you mentioned the yellow star they had.
when we arrived in Auschwitz, we had to get off the train. So when we got off the train, they separated us immediately, the men and the women. The little children with the mothers, the big children with the fathers, and the
Oh,
mothers,
Jehovah's Witness.
boys or girls. We never saw them immediately. They went in different directions. So I was with my mother and all my siblings. I had 5 siblings. The youngest was 2 years old. My mother took the 2-year-old from my arms, and Mengele wanted her. So he ordered her to put the child down and go to the right, because my mother had the eyes that he wanted to copy for the German Reich for after the war, so they can have blue eyes and blonde hair. But my mother yelled back at him and said, "My children will go with me." He got so angry that she did not obey him. He let her go and she went to the gas chamber with the children, but he took me instead. I didn't have the blue eyes, but he experimented on my eyes anyway. I have green eyes. And my first experiment with him was to change the color of my eyes. So Sapka and I, we met that day that we were on roll call, and he selected both of us because we were very similar. And he took us, that was our first experiment. And that's when I met Sapka. But he never changed my eyes or Sapka's. I have 2 holes in my eyes still today from something he injected. We didn't know what he injected, but today we do know because they did find out. But I went blind on each eye 10 years after. And when I went to the hospital to correct the eye, my doctor said, "Why, do you have a hole in your eye?" I says, "I have a hole in my eyes." He was a 30-year-old doctor, Italian. He didn't know nothing about the Holocaust. I didn't want to tell him why I had a hole in my eyes, but he insisted. So then I had to tell him that I was experimented on by this doctor, and he injected something and he left a hole in my eye. He says, "Do you know what he injected you with?" I says, "Doctor, if he didn't have a consultation with me, I was less than an insect to him." I says, "But if I would know, I would tell you." But today we do know because Israel found out what they injected us. You would not believe. You know, when a mother is pregnant, the baby in the stomach is in water, which is called saliva. And I remember he getting pregnant women straight off the train into the, the hospital. And he cut them wide open, no matter what month they were pregnant in, and drain, take everything out of there. That was the saliva he was draining from pregnant mothers, because the baby, before it's born, every baby has blue eyes. And when they hit the ear, they change color of the eyes. And that's what he was draining. The mother's saliva from the stomach injected us so we should get blue eyes. Would you believe it? This sick man, he could have been such a valuable scientist, but he went evil.
So the only other question, and I mentioned that because I had a friend of my grandmother's who was there that I knew when I was growing up, and she was a Jehovah's Witness, and so she had a purple triangle that's why I was wondering if you guys might have known each other. But the other question I had, that was with the Do you see any parallels today that we should be concerned about, or things and attitudes and things like that that you feel could give rise to similar things are happening, or things like this happening today that we just need to stop, do more about?
Now, what's happening today is a repeating actions of them. They never stop, no matter, we have spoken, we have shown, we have taken people there to show them what happened, so they can learn, so not let it happen again. But it's happening every single day, everywhere around the world, targeting people that are innocent, that have not done anything all their lives, but good things. When is that going to stop? Who is going to be able to stop it? So far, nobody was able to. So that's the sad part. And no matter what, we survivors, and I'm speaking for all survivors, we have done so much in 80 years. We have taken our inside out to do, to tell, to show painful things. But we felt that it needs to be shown, it needs to be taught, it needs to be, stopped. But nobody was able to stop it. So hopefully our children and grandchildren and grandchildren will never know what we know.
Thank you, Irene. We have a question from Josh Kerner.
Okay.
Josh, do you want to come off mute?
Yes, sorry about that. Irene, thank you so much for speaking with us. I am a proud Jew. My mother's side, everybody came from Europe. My dad's side also, but came here, or I think my great grandmother escaped as the war was starting. And we have great memories from that. But I was going to ask you about the rise in anti-Semitism. John asked about that, but I wanted to know your feeling of when you first went to Israel.
When I first went to Israel, oh my God, I got the chills. In 1994, I went on a March of the Living. That was my first trip to Israel. When the plane landed in Tel Aviv, I was at the door and I looked out. I didn't let anybody get off the train before me. I saw all the Jewish flags flying and nobody was shooting at them. That was my first revenge. And when I got off, I kissed the ground. I just sat on the ground and watched those flags fly, wave, and be so proud and be so happy that Hitler didn't come here and destroy this beautiful site. That was my first impression of Israel. And after that, of course, I love Israel. I've been 21 times on the march and 3 times with my family and friends. So I've been to Israel a lot. And
Very
I
nice.
love the land. I support it. I help wherever I can. And I take children back there every single year from around the world.
Thank you, Irene. We have a question from Javier Montes.
Sure.
Hi, Irene. So similar to John's question, what would you say were maybe the first 5 kind of warning signs that you saw that were leading up to something very bad? Right, like at the beginning, when you felt like everything was fine, normal, right? I remember in your book you said one of the first things was not being allowed to go to school, right? That was kind of the first start of, hey, this is a little bit weird, right? But still accepting, like, hey, I guess it's just the times, okay? So, like, in case it starts to repeat itself, what are some things that maybe we should, be aware of at the forefront?
Well, the first, after we were stopped going to school, the first day, there was a Ukraine teacher, because the Ukrainians were helping the Germans and they were doing the work. And she was standing at the door with a big ruler and peddling the Jewish kids, get out, and never come back. That was the first shot. After that, the other thing was that the parents, they had to give up all that they loved. Transportation, they took my bicycle away from me. I went with the bicycle. I went to school every day on my bicycle. Well, I had no school, but they took the bicycle away. That was like so painful to me because my grandparents just bought me for Passover a new bicycle and they took it. I went back like 56 years later to my house, back to my home. And when I got my new bicycle, they painted the house and I ran into the wall with the bicycle. So the tire things were on the wall. Would you believe 56 years later, the tire wall was still there? So, like these things, they come back to you, and it's very painful to see my home today. They wouldn't even let me in. They wouldn't let me. I wanted to take my daughter inside. She was with me to show her where I slept or where I did my homework. They wouldn't let me in. They said it's theirs, and that's it. So, those are very painful things, but those are the things that were happening. First shock, first to me in school, then my father taking their business away, then my mother giving up the transportation and the radio, and then they were asking for the valuables. Then I heard her say to my father, they took our Jewish style, made it a badge of shame. They took our business. I am not going to give them my valuables. So she gave them to me to buy bread if I get hungry. Those are the first things that they shocked us with, because those were Hungarian Nazis that they were helping the Germans. We thought, we were good Hungarians. These were our friends, and now they are our enemies. So yeah, it was very, very, very stressful.
I'm not being aware of certain things, but when you say these things are still happening today, do you mean that in like a metaphorical way? I mean, are you saying there are parts of the world where, you know, genocide is actually happening that I may not know about, or, what's going on today that you feel like it's still going on?
We didn't know what was going on around the world because we had no way of listening to news or anything. So we didn't even know what was happening, that these things were already happening in our neighboring, like Czechoslovakia, which was our neighbor. We didn't even know what was going on there, that Jewish people were already taken to camps and stuff, until it happened to us, because we never believed that our own government is going to be our enemy. We were good Hungarians. We were good citizens, but it didn't help us.
Irene, thank you so much for blessing us with this time. I want to say that it's obvious that the world is a better place because of you, and continues
I
to
hope
be,
so.
a beacon of hope and shedding this message. And I can't imagine the amount of courage that it takes for you to relive these terrible things by sharing the stories. So thank you so much for making our world stronger by going through.
Share whatever you can that you got of me with whoever didn't hear a survivor or read a book or know anything about it. Everyone has to know.
This
So
has been extremely impactful for us, and we are very grateful. And we're going to spread love and tolerance and remain grateful for our blessings, and try to find purpose and meaning in our pain and suffering as well, like
thank
you
you
have
so
so
much. I
successfully.
love you all. You made a beautiful event and everybody learned a lot, I'm sure.
Thank you, Joel.
Yeah, thank you, Irene. I heard you speak recently in
Okay,
person.
so thank you for making this. Thank you,
Absolutely.
Hesby.
I want to share that three quick
She's
things. Well,
beautiful. Take care of her.
oh yeah, 22 years. So I saw Irene speak recently in person, and it's a longer conversation than this. She made it very short for us. We went over by a little bit, but I think we all agree how worth it is to go over a few minutes. Um, I had to step away because I get a little emotional over this story, and yeah, I can't believe that you went through this, that a human being had to go through this. One of the things that made me real happy is when you talked about the American soldier, because our son's a soldier, and your husband was, and so there's some good people out there. Thank you for this as an example of resilience, and like
I
David
want to
said,
tell my feelings about the soldiers. Those soldiers were like my fathers. I had all these fathers. I was only 14 years old when they found me. And they had a heart that was coming out of their chest to us. They were so good. They were so kind. They were so helpful in appeasing us, of making us feel, okay, a lot of bad things happen to you, but they will never happen again. And that's what they made us feel, to be human again, to be worthy of being out in the world again among normal people, so we can have a conversation like we had with them and not to be afraid of anything. They made us feel they gave me they raised me from the age of 14 to an adult.
beautiful.
That's fine and wonderful they were. So if he is a soldier, I love him.
Thank you. So many lessons here, and one of the many is appreciation for what we have. You know, I came to this country as an immigrant, uh, like you did, and I every day, right? I talk about how great this country is. So for those of us who were born here and don't have that gift of not know, you know, of knowing what it could be like otherwise, appreciate what you have in this country, the freedoms that we have. And thank you so much, Irene. I appreciate everything you do. Keep doing it. We're going to share this video with a lot of people.
And thank you for making this event. It was
Absolutely.
great.
Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye now.